This story is centered around the man named Ji-Hyuk, who has spent 1,000 years in a medieval Western fantasy-like world before returning back to the modern-day Earth. When he returns, he finds that his home is facing monster threats, and that humans with superpowers have appeared to protect the innocent people of Earth. The thing is, Ji-Hyuk himself lived like a true, bona fide demon king in that fantasy world, and the only reasons why he returned home is to find some peace and easygoing life. So what will a man like that do? The land was truly vast. A massive white fortress exuding an austere and noble aura stood firm in the middle of this stunning green landscape, the holy land of the god of light, Latrell. Many pilgrims thanked their benevolent deity for all of his blessings while they crossed the Sea of Green to seek out this holy land. When they laid their eyes upon the majesty of the white fortress, they could certainly sense the mighty awe of their god. So, it wasn't an exaggeration to call this piece of land a place of peace and divine blessing, filled to the brim with happiness and piety of the believers. That was if today was any regular day. Currently, there was an air of uncertainty whirling about this paradise, where the god of light, Latrell, usually called home. Outside the white walls of the fortress symbolizing Latrell, countless soldiers decked out in white-colored gear were stoically taking guard. To see so many soldiers standing in line while wearing armors that seemed to be shrouded in holy light was indeed truly a grand sight to behold. And in front of these gathered soldiers, knights wearing full-body armor that shone in pure silver light rode on white steeds that seemed to have not one speck of blemish on their perfect hides. These magnificent men and women were none other than the Holy Knight Order of Latrell, the agents of the God of Light's will. If there was one odd thing about this situation, then it would be the fact that all these men and women, who possessed overwhelming martial might and would normally be seen traversing the vast lands to spread the name of their god Latrell, were all gathered here. If one looked through history books, Latrell's holy knights had never ever gathered en masse like this at a single location in several hundreds of years, making this event quite vexing indeed. That wasn't the only strange thing, though. Besides the large army of Latrell, another large army wearing deep scarlet armor could be seen. And the size of this army didn't lose out to that of the Latrell's own white soldiers. They were the knights serving the god of sun, Dran, as well as the divine soldiers that served the sun god himself. That wasn't the end. A brown army symbolizing the god of earth, Gabion. A red army symbolizing the god of fire, Pharaoh. A blue army symbolizing the god of water, Bukawait. The grand armies of all 12 churches existing on the continent of Beraif, which means all lands united as one, had gathered here. Even the regular soldiers from the various divine kingdoms, exorcists and sorcerers that formed the very core of numerous magic kingdoms, as well as an army consisting purely of the barbarian horde who were normally looked down upon in Beraif, were all present and correct. It was a cacophony of colorful soldiers filling up the seemingly endless plain. This was the might of Beraif. This was everything that Beraif could offer. It was the largest alliance of humanity ever, something never before seen in the history of this world. If one were to understand the significance of this gathering, then that person would be overcome with many profound emotions. However, within the eyes of a certain old man who managed to bring together all these disparate forces, rather than pride, one could spy his deep-seated anxiety instead. All the preparations have been completed. This old man turned his head towards another old man wearing a red robe and slightly nodded his head. At the same time, all those who were waiting for the old man stood up from their seats of honor. Are they coming? Soon. It was a simple answer, but the expressions of the two old men who heard it got harder as they nodded their heads. They were lightly biting their lips. They were praying to their respective gods while crossing their hearts. They were frowning deeply all the while openly displaying their hostility. And there was uncertainty, also a slight hint of terror. Their eyes focused on the old man. This old man, he was the first servant and the one true voice of Latrell, the largest religion on the continent. He was Pope Diare the first of the Latrell's church. The man responsible for this unprecedented union of humanity in history did not shy away from their gazes and met them all, one by one. And looking at him, the popes of other religions as well as kings and emperors of many nations gravely nodded their heads. The gaze of Dairei the First was then redirected to the far distance, towards the end of the plains, the end of his eyesight, to the horizon. Anxiety that didn't fit his stations was slowly creeping into his eyes. A truly powerful army has amassed here. The Pope of the Drans Church, Veresigirl, spoke, his voice trembling slightly. The humanity will never lose. That is a matter of course. Aggressive voices of agreement called out from here and there. Dairei the First steeled himself while listening to their calls. Every possible preparation that could have been made had already been made. He had gathered the remaining strength of humanity to this place as the will of his God had dictated. The factionalism between different religions, the conflicts between different nations, these typical yet still serious issues continued to trouble him. It was a hard and painful process. But Dairei the First was able to complete what was initially deemed impossible. He relied on his unshakable faith to get this job done. However, what was this anxiety that didn't want to go away, no matter what? How could he possibly explain this cautiously blooming buds of anxiety flowering in his heart? Why, Your Holiness! It was then, a hurried voice reached him. There it comes. Your Holiness, over there. At the end of the pointed finger, at the place where the blue sky and the green fields seemed to meet. A spot on the once flawless horizon began to die in darkness. That thing, approaching the fort while blotting out the sky and the land, was akin to an unstoppable tidal wave. Dairei the First let out a bitter chuckle after seeing that slow but steadily approaching thing. That was pure darkness. That was the sum of all despair. That was the representation of true suffering. Seeing the fields blessed by Latrell's grace becoming dyed in black, even Dairei the First's heart darkened. Oh, dear God! My God! The distant, countless number of metallic giants, seemingly filling up the horizon, accompanied by the innumerable number of horrifying evil creatures rushing in behind them. Above their heads, demonic creatures with colorful wings flew around in the sky like storm clouds, casting dark shadows on the plain. The roars and cries of the vast army of monsters, and the metallic clangs from the movement of the giants, combined to create a dissonant orchestra of solemnness. Those who could see would see only the despair from this spectacle. Those who could hear would realize their fate from this spectacle. The restlessness born out of those with eyes and ears soon became a powerful wave that managed to shake the world. The metal giants stopped their march. The monsters let out horrifying screeches as they stood right behind the giants, facing the army of humanity. The noises they made suggested that they could attack at any moment. It was a sight so overwhelming, one's soul might have been crushed just by its pressure alone. The Pope of the Drans Church, Veresigirl, cried out, "Everyone, look!" at the place he was pointing at. From there, the roars of the evil monsters began subsiding. From there, silence and stillness spread out among the seemingly endless roars and cries of the monsters, and soon, all of it came to a stop. And this sight was far more terrifying than the festival of roarings and growlings. All those frenzied evil creatures and demons all held their breaths and began kowtowing on the ground. Complete silence. A total, chilling silence descended on the world, as if the spectacle of before was nothing more than just an illusion. A silence so eerie one could hear one's own heartbeat reigned over the entirety of the vast plain. *SFX for sounds of metal scrapping on the floor, I think. Breaking this silence. Everyone could hear gloomy metallic screeches. Two of the metal giants slowly turned to face each other, before kneeling down on one knee. Step, step. Soft footsteps could be heard. There was no way such soft footsteps could reach him from that far, yet Dairei the First had clearly heard them. Monsters made way while still keeping their heads buried in the ground. The metal giants solemnly greeted their master. From the dense forest of monsters that was parted like the Red Sea, a man slowly walked out. How should he be described? This man, the sight of him wearing a thick black robe wasn't anything too strange. Only that, his face was obscured from view due to the darkness cast by the robe's hood. From the corner of the abyssal black robe that seemingly absorbed all light, a hand peeked out, and it was reeking with deep crimson aura. And many Many jewels visibly hanging through the gaps of the robe glistened beautifully under the sunlight's reflection. In other words, it was an attire of a regular sorcerer. However, the reason why this appearance managed to instill such unbridled terror in the heart of all the onlookers was the blackish aura busy circling around the man. Resembling flames 1 second, and then black fog the next, these eerie and ominous black aura circled around its owner and burned fiercely before dissipating away. As a person who served the god of light, Dire the First knew instinctively just what that aura was. That was the origin of all evil, the flames of hell. It should not even exist in this plane of existence. Dire the First's heart tightened. That man in front was the cause of all this. The man who wrought the end of the world. The king of the dead. The despair of all living things. The man who swallowed whole the nations of the living, and took away the breaths of all who lived. The archenemy of all 12 main religions. No, the enemy of all who lived. The man capable of causing the 12 gods, who protected the land of Barafe, to scream out their divine messages. The man capable of causing the kings and emperors of 48 nations ruling this land of Barafe to put aside their differences and insecurities to unite as one, as if they no longer had any choice in the matter. The man capable of forcing all these disparate powers into a single location through sheer terror and despair. Dire the First struggled to cry out, "Oh, hear thee, the bringer of apocalypse." His voice was amplified and resounded around the vast plain. "Oh, the king of the dead, the despair of all living creatures, the ruler of 10,000 demons and millions of beasts." As if to reply to those words, all the evil creatures that were keeping dead still lifted up their heads and broke out in a thunderous commotion. Immediately, Dire the First felt his blood run cold. Although there were millions of human soldiers between them and him, it seemed like only the sound of their roars could be heard and nothing else. "The humanity does not fear thee. The humanity will never perish. On this land blessed by the gods, this is where thy dark ambitions will crumble, and thy army of darkness shall return to the embrace of nature and disappear altogether. We shall never surrender. Even if we shed our blood and offer our lives, our flowing blood will become the milk that sustains this continent, and our flesh will become the fertilizer that enriches this world, and our souls shall return to the warm embrace of our benevolent 12 gods and finally rest in peace." With the cries of Dire the First, the human soldiers began raising cheers as well. Millions of them cheered out until their throats were hoarse. Dire the First's eyes became bloodshot. Yes, this was the power of humanity. This was the will of humans, carrying the blessings of the 12 gods. The despair and terror that were wringing out his heart crumbled, and instead, powerful, inspiration emotions filled it up. On this land, we might flicker like a dying candle. We might fall like worthless things, but our unyielding will shall drive the blade of faith into thy heart. Can thee sense our undying will, evil sorcerer? Can thee feel our undying might? The lich who have forsaken even the death itself. Chato mat. Yell lol. It's actually, no! Stop right there. Well, I just couldn't resist. Chapter 2. Stop spreading false rumors. Please, too. It was then, a loud voice rang out in the vast open plain. Those who were searching for the origin of this voice soon came to realize that it originated from none other than the demon himself, the bringer of apocalypse, standing in front of them. The bringer raised his hand and slowly pulled his hood back. The face below it belonged to a still considerably young man. His skin was slightly reddish-yellow, most likely due to the influence of the darkness, but besides that, he was completely unremarkable in any shape or form. The short hairstyle was something uncommon in this world, but the face below it attested to the reason why he was now referred to as the bringer of apocalypse. A pair of small eyes and flattish nose under those narrow eyebrows. Strange skin color and the unexplainable aura that was a human's, yet at the same time not really. He was a creature with a human's appearance, yet was no longer one. The bringer of apocalypse shouted out loudly, "Who the F***CK is a damn lich? Huh? I was planning to keep my mouth shut, but you treat me like a damn bag of bones. Hey, have you ever seen a lich with this much fatty tissue?" Dire the First became utterly speechless. Of course, he had never seen one. After all, a lich wasn't an existence that was commonly seen. Plus, there was no recording of a lich with all his flesh and skin intact in the history books. Indeed, a lich should be a skeleton wearing a black robe, that was for sure. Suddenly, Ji-Hyuk felt lots of pointed stares. Slightly distorted eyes were stabbing his backside. To receive such stares from his allies and nobles just because of a simple slip of a tongue. And it wasn't even all that important whether he was a blooming lich or not. Ji-Hyuk the First sheepishly cleared his throat and shouted once more. Everyone on this continent knows of thy rejection of death with the sorcery of the demons, and that thee hath lived for hundreds of years already. Oh, thee who are no longer confined by the chains of logic, although thy exterior resembles a human. No one here mistakes thee for a human. Even if thee once was human, thee hath abandoned the paths of humanity already. Can thee not recall how many kingdoms you have destroyed during thy march? Can thee not remember all the lives thee hath reaped all these years? The bringer of apocalypse listened to the passionate ravings of Ji-Hyuk the First with indifference, and replied nonchalantly, "Hey man, stop spreading false rumors about me. Please. I didn't reject death, I just can't die, that's all. Hell, I've literally tried everything and anything to die, so what the hell do you want me to do? And also, I did not destroy anyone. They just killed themselves. Seriously now, just who the F***ck was it that rushed in like a pack of wild dogs, when I just wanted to quietly pass by and head off to Latrell's church headquarters? So why are you blaming me for that, huh?" Ji-Hyuk the First dumbfoundedly stared at the bringer of apocalypse. When someone was corralling all those metal giants and all those evil demons while saying, "We're just passing by," who in their right minds would get up and reply, "Yes, please do." Huh? Wasn't that the basic of all basic common sense? A bloody common sense, man. Whatever. You look like the leader here, so let's negotiate. Did these say negotiate? Me, I don't want to fight you, and I don't want to destroy this continent either, unlike what some of you have been yapping on about. All I want is... The bringer of apocalypse raised his finger and pointed at the very tip of the tallest spire of the fort. And there was a beautiful jewel on the tip of this spire, emitting 5 different colors of light. The unquestionable evidence of the god Latrell caring after this blessed land. The Eye of Latrell was placed there. Gimme that, and I shall quietly leave you guys alone in peace. I will return all these demons back to where they came from, and I will stop all the golems too. Hell, if you want them, I'll give you all these golems. All you have to do is to give me that. Ji-Hyuk? Ji-Hyuk the First chuckled in a creepy and low-pitched voice. Did thee seriously believe we do not know that thee will use the sacred Eye of Latrell to bring about the apocalypse of this world? What the? Just where the hell did you hear all this crappy rumor about me? Who was it? The divine oracle that implored us to never hand over the eye to thee have been received by us. Us. All 12 churches. The bringer of apocalypse groaned out. I bloody knew it. That's why they were so desperate. Thee want to steal the Eye of Latrell? Try it. But it shall not be so simple. Even if only one of us draws breath, thee shall never lay thy filthy hands on the eye. If our sacrifices can ensure the survival of Barafe, we shall gladly offer up our lives. And thus, thee shall never overcome our might. Because the divine blessings of the 12 gods are together with us. Praise the Lord Latrell. With the declaration of Ji-Hyuk the First, millions of human warriors began making their own individual signs of worship while praising their gods. No point in talking anymore, huh? Well, the bringer didn't have much hope of talks resolving all misunderstandings. Even as he was on his way here, these guys in front simply didn't want to understand him. Anyways, since he had gone through roughly the similar thing until he was sick and tired of it all, the bringer just accepted it as a normal occurrence now. Ji-Hyuk the First shouted out again. Thee shall see the end of thy long road today, right here. Oh, the man who rejected the providence of the gods. At these words, the bringer of apocalypse began giggling like crazy. Ji-Hyuk the First squinted his eyes. It wasn't just because the laughter of that evil and vile sorcerer was getting on his nerves. No, he acutely knew. He had met many, many people and heard their terrible ordeals and shared tears with them, so he could tell. Although that laughter could be seen as one of ridicule, there were so many different emotions contained within it. Delight and despair, bitterness and grief, and even deep, profound sadness. "Hey man, did you know?" The bringer of apocalypse murmured slowly. "That is my wish." His voice was tranquil. "But I realized it won't happen, especially in this place. That is why I gotta go back to where it's possible again. For me to die and make all your wishes to come true, I need that I see." His voice started off quiet and calm, yet became louder and louder. "You are right. I'm just a goddamn monster in this place. A damn demon. A demon who can't die and can't disappear. That's why I want to go to a place where I can. I want to go to a place where I can be a human again. So I can die, just like how all of you have been praying for." His voice now contained his true feelings, in the form of a rant. "But why the F***ck do you keep getting in my way? Huh? Why the F***ck do you still try to stop me? Right until the god ***end. I'm trying to die like you've always wanted. Yet why do you still keep blocking me? Huh? Do you have any god ***mn idea how many hundreds of years I wasted trying to get here? You want to stop me? You want to try and stop me, again? Fine. Then die. Die and die again. I will gift you that one thing, this thing that I've yearned for so long, to receive, but to never feel its embrace. Soon, you all will realize how nice a blessing it truly is." The appearance of a fun-loving young man dissipated altogether. The only thing left behind was a sight of a demon spitting out frenzied raving. The only man to climb up to the unprecedented heights as a sorcerer, a monarch of darkness who lead millions to despair. The worst of all heart-wrenching despair that turned the half of the continent into the land of the dead, and driving the survivors into this tiny piece of land so he could torment and mock them. The man who would bring about the end of the world. He was the bringer of apocalypse. "We shall never surrender." Right? So obvious. The eyes of the bringer gleamed ominously. "In that case, die where you stand." The moment he finished his sentence, every one of the once silent demons and monsters bared their fangs. The aggressive roarings of these creatures, no longer controlled by the bringer of apocalypse, exploded forth and covered the entire plain. KKKKIECKKK, there was no particular signal. But, as if they had known it all along, demons and monsters spat out terrifying screams and began rushing forward. Countless creatures stumbled and perished under the mad dash, yet they continued to run forward. And even the metal giants began taking one massive stride after another. Every step these giants took crushed several demons and monsters underfoot, causing ear-piercing screams to ring out. Yet the emotionless creatures simply continued on with their relentless march. The remaining might of all humanity had gathered here. That might was powerful. That might was great. However, even this mighty force was cowering before the crazed frenzy of the evil monsters. The white army began to waver. Soldiers unknowingly taking half a step back caused the formation to be pushed back and caused a ripple effect. "Oh, supreme and omnipotent being, hear thy servants long to receive thy divine wills. The light of the dawn that drives away the darkness of the night, grant thy favor to thy servants." From both of Dire the First's hands, divine white streams of light exploded out and began blessing the soldiers guarding the fortress. The other popes also began calling out to their chosen gods and blessed the soldiers as well, leading the army to regain their spirit and make their charge against the incoming waves of monsters. And finally, the armies of humanity and armies of monsters collided. Torn flesh and broken bones were flung about everywhere, as blood rained down on the ground. If there existed a real hell, this place would be it. Do not get bogged down. Charge! Several clerics and priests located here and there within the army continued to pour out divine power while covered in sweat. Evil demons became much weaker in front of these priests, and the wounds on the bodies of their allies were healed in an instant. Woo-woo! In that moment, there were several men that broke off out from the standoff. They were clothed in fur and leather from head to toe, wielding a huge battle axe on one hand and a terrifying hammer on the other. The barbarian horde that once plunged the continent into chaos was now fighting for its very survival. Their axes cleaved demons in half, bones and all, while their hammers shattered the heads of demons as if they were busting watermelons. However, the counterattacks of demons and monsters were nothing to scoff at. Countless sharp blades shot out from the ground below and sliced up the formation's rear. Helplessly getting their legs and ankles cut up by these suddenly intruding blades, soldiers rolled on the ground while screaming out desperately, "Do not falter!" Magic spells fired by the sorcerers fell where demons and monsters were gathered the most. No matter how strong the monsters and demons were, no matter how huge the metal giants were, they were still outnumbered 1 to 100. There was no end to the human army, while the number of monsters fell drastically at the suicidal charging attacks by the unafraid soldiers. The sky might be still dominated by the flying demons, but as far as the ground battle was concerned, humanity had the advantage. "O great Latrell, bless thy servants. Receive the cleansing fire of the god Pharaoh." Many wide-scale blessings descended, and fatigued soldiers regained their vigor at the same time. "O great god Latrell," Dire the First shouted out without realizing it. Finally, the end to the 30-year-long war of hardship was coming ever so closer. The war potential of the demons were great, but the powers of united humanity were greater. The demon army was slowly being pushed back. It was then Dire the First spotted the Bringer of Apocalypse finally making his move. This man called the Bringer of Apocalypse, the world's most vile sorcerer and a man who transcended past the death itself and had supposedly found the truth. The Bringer of Apocalypse, who had been standing like a stone statue and observing the situation until now, slowly lifted his hand. Black smoke rose from his hand, which formed a huge magic circle in the air. No, not just in the air. A total of 4 magic circles formed around the Bringer, 1 in his front and 2 on either side, and began emitting black beams of light. What is that? It was hard to tell what type of magic they would produce, but the results would definitely terrible, solely judged from the vast sizes of each magic circle. Stop him! The best method to stop a sorcerer was attack before the chanting was completed. All those who knew this fact didn't let the Bringer do his thing. Rangers fired countless arrows at his direction. Wizards poured their magic spells. In the meantime, the Bringer's lips slowly parted and an emotionless command rang out quite clearly. "Open up!" The magic circles emitted a chilling light, and an enormous black gate suddenly materialized. All the arrows and magic spells aimed at the Bringer of Apocalypse were sucked into the newly appeared gate standing before him. Dire the First opened wide his eyes and glared at this gate. He could tell the purpose of this gate more or less after sensing the dreary aura seeping out from beyond it. His urgent mind became a scream. "Stop him!" Contrary to the urgency of Dire the First, the Bringer leisurely opened his mouth. "Devour them all!" In that moment, from the gate, devils with grotesque shapes began pouring out like crashing tidal waves. The devils jumping out from the gate floating in the air got flattened somewhat after falling to the ground. But none gave a rat's guess about the crushed flesh and ravenously dashed forward. And more poured out, and more poured out, and yet more poured out. Although there were more than enough monsters and demons and devils to completely cover the land, more kept pouring out. Evil creatures continued to pour out, as if the only way to end this was when the entire world was filled up with these foul creatures. The sky was now completely inundated with the flying demons. These demons even began attacking one another, roaring out and got into a messy brawl. It was as if the entire sky was made up solely of these monsters. From the front and from the sides, even under the feet, monsters rushed in. No matter how many heads were crushed, no matter how many necks were cut, no matter how many lengthy legs were broken, no matter how many they killed, monsters kept rushing in. The evil beings that could easily rip a person into pieces with nothing more than their fingertips now outnumbered humans. It was a monster wave. It was the unstoppable waves of demons. Despair filled Dire the First's eyes. There were simply too many monsters to kill. And even as killings continued, more monsters poured out from the gate, their numbers ever increasing higher and higher. Truly, would that man bring about the destruction of this world? It was then